Everyone. Oh, it's fun seeing everyone pop out of hyperspace. It's always my favorite. Welcome, everyone. We have a winter webinar today, and it's definitely feeling wintry where I live. I'm in Pennsylvania, and it was supposed to be a big ice storm. It's mostly a rainstorm. Oh, cool. Look at all these fun people. I'm so glad you guys can make it. So I am Kristen Ryman. I'm a family physician, board certified in family physician and also integrative medicine. And if you already know me because you're on my list and you follow me, you know that I love to talk about nutrition and about nutrition as a foundation for healing. So today's talk is called Food is Medicine, 5 Healthy Steps to a Happier You. And I am joined in with my administrative assistant, Kristen Stanowitz, I'm so grateful for you, Kristen. Thank you for being here. You're going to be letting people in and answering questions in the chat so I can give my talk. So this talk should go for about a half an hour to 40 minutes, and then we're going to go through some questions and answers at the end. I also have a special offer for you if you stay to the end. So please stay to the end. Even if you're watching the replay, watch all the way to the end. There's good stuff all the way through. Kristen, I need you to let me share my screen.
I might have to make you the host because it's not showing up.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, so here we go. Put your seatbelt on, people. We're going to go kind of fast today. I've been known to give 3-hour seminars, but this one is not going to go that long because I have to drive to Baltimore no, I'm going to change that. I get to drive to Baltimore for a volleyball tournament this weekend with my daughter. So here we go. Can you see that? Everyone can see that on my screen? Great. Food is medicine. So I think it was Hippocrates who said, let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food. And I love that because so much can happen when we heal the gut through whole, real foods. And if you take nothing else away from this lecture, I want you to understand that much of what you suffer from can and does get better when you heal the gut. And the best way I know to heal the gut is not through a ton of supplements. It's not through a fecal matter transplant. It's through just putting in whole, real, clean foods. Okay. Before I get into this, though, I want to start by acknowledging that some people will be triggered by the concept of some foods are good for you, some foods are bad for you, some foods are healthier than others. If that is you, you may want to turn this off right now. We're not going to get upset if you leave because this is a triggering conversation. I want you to be aware of what your own triggers are, and I don't want anybody leaving feeling like they're worse off than they were at the beginning because of, say, an undiagnosed eating disorder or another disordered eating pattern they struggle with that could be triggered. So if that's you, please hop off now and you can contact me later for some other resources. So a general disclaimer that I do at all the beginnings of my talks is that even though I'm a doctor and some of you are my patients, that doesn't mean this is medical advice from me to you. This is information, okay? These are options for you to consider and information for you to consider on your own health journey, and any intervention that you take, lifestyle or otherwise, ideally is taken in the context of a trusted healing relationship with a trusted guide, like a doctor or a nurse or a nutritionist or an acupuncturist or someone else who's got your back, but not just because you heard it on a webinar. So here's what we're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about why this matters to me. I want you to think about, as I'm talking about me, why it matters to you. And then I'm going to ask you to throw in the chat why you're here. We're going to get into this concept of leaky buckets and leaky guts. If you've heard my webinars before, you know what I mean by a bucket. And I'm going to give a quick overview of that because I think it's a really important concept as we think about overall causes of inflammation and how to reduce it in the body. Then I'm going to get into the 5 steps, the 5 healthy steps to a healthier you. And these are basically part of preparing for and implementing an elimination diet and a reintroduction. So that's the spoiler alert. If you're wondering what that big tool is and now you don't want to stay, that's fine. Bless you. You can go and off and do something else. But if you're looking to hear about the intervention that I use in my patient practice and with myself and in my family and pretty much anyone who will talk to me, as the most reliable way to get at the root cause of common and sometimes rare chronic issues, whether they're annoyances or true medical problems that are causing you a lot of suffering, this is my favorite way. And I'm going to walk you through what the 5 steps are to doing that successfully. And then for those who are interested in doing that same intervention with me in a group setting on Zoom, starting Monday, I'm going to tell you about what we're doing starting Monday, and I'm going to invite you to join us. So again, this is a free talk. I hope by the end of it, everyone on this call has every bit of information that they need to go home, and if they choose, to rock a comprehensive elimination diet, period. That's my fantasy, is that everyone walks away like on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being like, I understand everything she said. I super agree that it's important, and I'm super, super pumped to go do this, and I know how to do it. 1 being like, how did I end up on this webinar and why am I still here? But you're all like a 5 out of 5. That will be my goal. And some of you are going to be like a 3. And I'm going to ask you, what's keeping you from being a 3 to 3.5? Like, what would be that thing that takes you from a 3 to 3.5 or a 3 to a 4? And if your answer is, I need to do it with some support, I need to do it with some guidance, I need to do it with some help, then we can talk about that, because that's what's coming starting Monday. And there'll be some question and answers probably that get answered along the way. So let me start by talking about why this matters to me. I am, as I said, a board certified family physician and board certified integrative medicine physician as of last year. Nothing about me being a doctor should inspire you to think I have anything to say about nutrition, period. The amount of nutritional information that I learned in medical school and residency that was accurate was zero amount. Okay. I learned nothing that was helpful or true about nutrition in medicine or in residency. Everything I learned about nutrition, I learned afterwards. It wasn't so much living in China where I learned it. I lived in China for 2 years, and this was like la mian, the best noodle ever in Changsha. And they would whip it and they would crack it and they would turn it over on itself and they whip it again. And it became like 100 miles long and it was delicious. And how happy am I that I was still eating gluten when I lived in China? So happy, except now what I know is it was laying the foundation for what happened to me much later, which was this. So who knows what that is? Raise your virtual hand or your real hand. Yeah, that's a portending sign of badness, which is Lyme disease, which happened to me several times, actually. The near-death experience happened when I was in my early 40s. And when I say near-death experience, I mean lying in a bed for months and months, losing 30 pounds that I didn't have to lose, couldn't pick up my infant anymore. I mean, bad, super bad. And that for me was the impetus to learn all of the things about how do you support your immune system and how do you support a foundation for healing so you can climb your way out of that hole, that I ended up learning to get me out of that gets me here today, being able to talk about this stuff. So everything I tell you about is stuff I've done for myself. I don't really like to peddle medicine anymore that I haven't tried on myself or my family, and frankly feel really good about. So this is why I talk about nutrition. I also work for the Family Hope Center. I'm their medical director and their nutrition expert. I've been there for 8 years. For those of you who don't know about them, get to know them. They're an amazing group of people in Norristown, Pennsylvania. We teach parents how to heal children's brains of anything that ails them. And actually, you might be saying, why just children? Can't brains heal at any age? Well, yes, they can. And actually, we have some adults on our program too, who are finding great value in the protocols we use. And at the foundation of our protocol, of our brain healing protocol, is a brain-friendly diet. And that's the diet that I teach to all my clients. Because it turns out you don't have to be a hurt kid to need a healthy bunch of food on your plate. This is the little core group of humans and canines who matter most to me in the world. And I want you to know that everything I tell my patients to do, everything I'm going to talk about today for you to consider doing, this little tribe of people has been through with me on multiple occasions, multiple rounds, because, I care about them too. And they're part of why I do what I do as well. So here's where I would like to hear, and you can just put it in the chat. Who are you and why are you here to learn about gut health? Just feel free to throw that in the chat when you're ready. And while you're doing that, I want to introduce you to my little friend, the bucket. So the bucket is this is not my metaphor, but I think it's a beautiful one. I borrow this from the naturopaths, and it really gets to the core of kind of what happens that causes disease. And when I say disease, I really mean anything. Like anytime you have disease or dis-ease in the body, there is inflammation. And at the root of inflammation, there is a full bucket. So what do I mean by the bucket? The bucket is our capacity, our innate capacity to hold on to toxins as we process them and get them out of the body. So this yellow arrow at the top represents all the things that we fill our buckets with during the day, whether we're breathing in pollution or eating foods that have pesticides on them, or thinking thoughts that create stress in our bodies. Yes, your thoughts and your stress, those go in the bucket too. Or whether we have Lyme disease or some other infection or COVID, and it's creating a bunch of toxic overload and it's creating inflammation. All of that fills our bucket. The good news is our buckets have a drain. Like our buckets are constantly holding things and then passing them through. So the drain is our pee and our poop and our sweat and our breath and our lymphatics that move things from parts of the drain to outward. And that's how we get rid of toxins. And this is a beautiful system. This is a beautiful system because most of the time, most of us don't even know we're doing this. It's happening while we're sleeping. It's happening while we're breathing and running and just being in the world. We don't have to think about it until our bucket gets too full. And when our bucket gets too full, either because there's more coming in than we can process or because something closes up the drain, like we're constipated for 6 days in a row, we feel terrible. And sometimes the feelings of terribleness extend so far that we get a diagnosis or we get a syndrome or we get someone labeling us with one of these things. So take a look at this picture. All of these things at some level represent a bucket that's overflowing with toxins. Anything on here surprise you? Yeah, throw it in the chat. I want to hear what surprises you guys. The ADHD surprises you. Yeah, ADHD can be a lot of things. And it's at core, there's a disorganization in the pons. This is what we teach at the Family Hope Center. ADHD can be fixed, actually, not with a drug, although those are good Band-Aids sometimes, but with a rewiring of the underlying circuitry in the brain, which you do with the neuroplasticity program. But underneath that, you have to have a diet that is going to heal the gut and provide nutrients to the brain so it can do its work. Yeah. So Jessica says, I'm just surprised by how many things there are. There's so many side effects. Yeah. And so one of the things that often puzzles people is like, well, there's all these, we've parsed into all these diagnoses codes, right? Everything's different. Well, yeah, everything's a little different in terms of the manifestation in that person. But at the core, at the underlying foundation of all this stuff, there's inflammation. And there's an immune system that's not happy. And there's a gut that needs to be fixed and that needs to be healed. And so I know all these things go on this list because I have seen all of these things get better and sometimes go away completely. Sometimes go away completely. Meaning diagnosis code, ICD-10 code, explodes, gone. Not always, but sometimes. It's all a spectrum of how much it's causing suffering. And you can ooch people back along that spectrum by reducing inflammation, reducing inflammation, reducing inflammation, and empowering the immune system, which comes as a result also. So the concept again is we have a bucket, things flow through us, and the goal isn't to avoid every possible toxin in the world. Like that's impossible. You know, babies are born today with upwards of 400 different chemicals in their cord blood. And that's just the ones they looked for. So it's not possible to avoid a toxic world, but it is possible to shore up the bucket, to turn down the faucet with the things we can control, and to find ways to open the drain. And the intervention I love does all of them, all of these things. So the comprehensive elimination diet is not something I made up. There are many different types of elimination diets. The one I use, I learned from the Institute for Functional Medicine 10 years ago as I was recovering from Lyme, and it worked. I've made some tweaks to it over the years. I always make tweaks as I'm working with individuals or in groups, individuals in those groups to try to make sure we get all the results. But I would say 95% of the people who do this diet experience healing of the gut. And it's beautiful because not only do you heal the gut, which means all of these symptoms can get better within the span of a few weeks sometimes. But then once the gut is healed, you can add foods back one at a time and see what brings back your symptoms. In other words, what food is not on your team moving forward if you care about, you know, moving forward without these symptoms or these diagnoses. All right, so here are the 5 healthy steps to a healed gut. And I've sort of broken them down somewhat arbitrarily because there are bits and pieces of this happening throughout the elimination diet. And when I say the elimination diet, I'm really talking about a 3-week intervention, a 21-day intervention. But I think it's important before you jump into an intervention like this to really work the steps of information and preparation. So we're going to start there. So step 1, information. That's what you guys are doing right now. You're learning about what a leaky gut looks like on the surface of a human. It can look like psoriasis. It can look like acne. It can look like mental illness. It can look like OCD. It can look like anxiety and depression. It can look like diabetes. It can look like heart disease, right? A leaky gut is at the root of many of these things. And if it's not the only root, it's certainly part of the problem if you haven't fixed a leaky gut. Mark Hyman, some of you guys are probably familiar with Mark Hyman. He's one of my teachers in functional medicine. He has been known to say, 95% of chronic illness in this country, he's talking about America, but it's true everywhere in developed worlds, 95% of chronic illness, all this stuff, right? This is all chronic illness, is preventable and treatable with lifestyle and nutrition. We ate our way into this mess, he says, we can eat our way out of this. I mean, I know I already gave you the takeaway, but if you take nothing else away, like take away that. Because I didn't get that message in medical school. Your doctors don't get that message either. That message did this to me when I heard it, like 5 years after residency. Once I started working for the Family Hope Center and I went to some conferences and I was learning about the ketogenic diet. And I realized that, wow, we can actually reverse diabetes. If you don't put sugar in the body can't have a sugar problem. You know what I mean? Like, who talks about that? Not enough people. But now you can start talking about it. Okay? You can start talking about it. So information is about what is a leaky gut. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. Who's at risk of having a leaky gut? Well, we just saw that picture. And then how do you fix it? I'm going to spend most of my time for information on this slide because I think this slide, well, I always love histological side. This is like, I was super nerdy about histo in med school, but I loved explaining it at this level because you can actually picture the intricate coolness of the small intestine here. So this picture on the left is basically all the different organs. Sorry about dog feet walking around. All different organs. And the arrow is pointing at the small intestine, which looks like sausages. And in fact, your sausages are usually packed in the lining of a small intestine of pork. Although actually, I learned recently not in this country anymore, because guess what? The pigs in this country, because of their diet, their gut is too leaky to hold sausage anymore. We have to import it or make it synthetic. That's pretty gross, right? But this is what a small intestine is supposed to look like. It's, yards and yards and yards and meters of a tube that is primarily designed to break down and absorb foods that you've put into the tube. Okay. So you put in tubes up in the mouth, it goes down the esophagus into the stomach grinds it around. The stomach's this thing over here, kind of to the right of the tube or right of the arrow, this sort of like C-shaped thing. Stomach grinds it up. That's where all those sounds come from when your stomach is grumbling. Your stomach secretes some acid into there. So you're breaking down the proteins and then it goes into that long tube, the small intestine. And once it's in the long tube, your small intestine cells are both managing the broken down foods, but also there's a brush border. So if you look up here at all these little sort of like wiggly fingers at the top right picture, those are like the folds of the small intestine. And there's white blood cells in there. That's the purple dots. And there's all sorts of cool, there's little crypts in there that secrete little fatty little kind of mucus. But then if you look carefully, even at this bottom picture, you see along those pictures, you have this extra little finger-like projections called cilia. And these things are very, very highly specialized to have lots of surface area. So all the juices in your small intestine can have access to all the different proteins on the cell membranes of those little finger projections. Okay. And on those projections, you're getting absorption of nutrients. Now, what's supposed to happen is that by the time they get through into those cells, the food should have been broken down completely. They should be broken down into the tiniest, smallest little, I like to call them the Lego building blocks possible, right? It's not a big house or a car that your 11-year-old just made and left on the floor and you stepped on. It's actually the individual building blocks, okay? And the individual building blocks are things like amino acids of proteins. They're not polypeptides, which are strings of amino acids. They're single amino acids, okay? They're glucose for carbohydrates or sucrose, and they're fatty acids for fats, okay? Those are the tiniest possible constituents of the foods we put in our body. We're supposed to grind them up in our mouth, grind them up in our belly. Pancreas squirts in a bunch of enzymes in the small intestine. We start digesting them, breaking them down, and they're not supposed to get into the small intestine and through into the bloodstream until they're the single Lego pieces. No big trucks. The problem is, if we're eating foods or medications or super stressed, and for whatever, any of those things can create a leaky gut, and our gut becomes like a sieve. Those tight cells between, what you see, these little cells at the bottom, it's like little pink wedges with purple in it. Each one of those has a purple thing. The purple is the nucleus. Each one of those is a cell, and they're all squished together really tightly. But they can actually start to get pulled apart when there's inflammation in the gut from any reason. Any reason. I don't care if it's because you ate some GMOs yesterday. I don't care if it's because you're in the hospital and you're super stressed. I don't care if it's because you're on Tylenol and that's not a food. Anything that your gut sees as not food, anything that your body gets stressed by can create a temporary breach in that. And then you have, my friends, a leaky gut. And your intestine is as good as those pork intestines in America, which means we cannot use them to make sausage and we wouldn't want to. And the bottom line is things are going into your bloodstream that shouldn't get there. Small Lego trucks, not small pieces. All right, this is an important piece, and Laura has her hand up. So Laura, do you have a question, or did your hand just get stuck in the up position? No? Okay. All right, I just want to make sure you're okay because I kept seeing it there. All right. So who has a leaky gut? All these people. And I could put anything else on there too. Look, high risk COVID's on there. High risk COVID is on there. And if you look at the things that put you at risk for terrible badness with COVID, they're all the usual suspects that are the end result of a leaky gut. So I could get really animated talking about how upset I am that we squandered a bunch of time in the early pandemic talking about things that didn't matter as much as let's just heal everyone's gut and see what happens. So step 2 is preparation. Before you embark on a comprehensive elimination diet, which is, no cakewalk, gluten-free or otherwise, okay? It's hard, it takes time, it takes preparation. I encourage people to really think clearly about your goals, what food you need to remove, who you're gonna do it with. Are you doing this alone in your kitchen with your refrigerator calling to you at every moment? Or are you doing this with your whole family? Are you doing it with a friend? Maybe a friend at work or a sister or a brother. I encourage people to find a buddy and do it with a buddy because it's not easy. And I will tell you what, even though you might be one person and you feel so alone, you're not actually alone ever because you are filled with teeming numbers of microbiota, bacteria and yeast and fungi and parasites and viruses. And all of those things have their own intelligence, believe it or not. And when we are in the room or sharing a body with, for example, a yeast overgrowth, all bets are off in terms of choosing foods that are going to feed the human over the yeast. Yeast tend to overgrow when we feed them too many carbs and sugars. And when yeast overgrow, they get very, very loud. It's almost like they're sitting on your shoulder, kind of chirping in your ear going, are you going to eat that second potato? Because it's looking really good. Or, oh, look, there's one piece of bread left. Grab it. Okay. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you've ever been in the room with a yeast overgrowth. Yeah. It can be, and it's oppressive. I mean, I joke about it, but it can be really, really difficult. And people was their toes at the bottom. That's your yeast, people. That is your yeast. Okay. So if that resonates with you, I would encourage you to get some help. Be with a person who can help hold you accountable. Remove all those sugars and carbs from your kitchen because it's going to be hard to do a diet without the support you need. All right, if you raise your hand for these, I appreciate your honesty. You can put your hands down. The other thing I encourage people to think about is stocking up. So the first time I did this 10 years ago or so, I definitely had a yeast overgrowth. And so my brain just kept thinking about, okay, you can't have sugar on the elimination diet. Except you can have 3 different kinds. You can have brown rice syrup, you can have blackstrap molasses, and you can have agave. So guess what I had on my kitchen counter in large vats, sitting there the whole time, kind of talking me down. The agave and the blackstrap molasses, which I never touched because it's kind of intense, and the brown rice syrup. They were there going, Kristen, it's okay. If you need sugar, we will take care of you. Now, they are still sugars. They are still going to spike your blood sugar. They're still going to feed your yeast. However, they're not allergenic typically. And so that's why they're allowed on the diet. So I should say something right now, and this maybe is more of the information piece. Elimination diets don't necessarily take out all the foods that can contribute to a yeast overgrowth. So the way I teach it, I combine 2 different things. One is an allergen elimination diet, and I'll get into the foods that we eliminate in a minute. And the other is I teach people how to build their plates properly so that they're not over consuming the carbs and the sugars that feed their yeast, which can then undermine the project of healing the gut. Okay, that's an important thing to understand. Not all elimination diets will heal your gut of yeast. Okay. So I have a few things I stock up on. I no longer need to stock up on those agave and brown rice syrup situations because I fixed my yeast overgrowth. But I do stock up on things like bone broth and nut butters. And I make a really mean walnut pesto that has no dairy in it. Super yummy. I'm not even sure I need to go back. I usually kind of make that throughout the year, regardless of whether I'm doing an elimination. I put all my favorite recipes for the kind of stocking up in this little book called the Immune Boosting Pantry. So if you guys didn't get it already, it should have been sent to you when you registered for this little mini course. But Kristen, why don't you go ahead and throw the link in the chat so people who didn't see it can get it now. And then the last thing, again, I'm going to remind people who've stuck with us who may be triggered by the idea of the word elimination or the word diet. If you are dealing with an eating disorder, undiagnosed or diagnosed, if you're dealing with disordered eating of any kind that makes you feel ashamed, that makes you feel afraid, that you feel is unhealthy for you, even if you haven't done anything about it, you may not be safe to do this diet at this time, right? This is something you do later when you've managed all of that or at least gotten a handle on it. So that's part of preparation, is being honest with yourself. Am I safe to do this right now? I just got off the phone with someone who really wants to do this diet with her family, but they're about to be traveling for 2 weeks. That's not the right time for them to do this diet. Because that was not a duck, that was a dog sneezing in the corner. It's not the right thing for someone who can't do it. Like, I recommend waiting until you can do it and do it reliably without having to start over. All right, so step 3, everyone wants to know, what do I have to take out? First of all, you don't have to do anything, right? This is just information. So don't get in that place with me, okay? I'm not that kind of doctor. So the elimination phase is where you opt to remove all of these things because these are the top culprits that either harm the gut kind of as a first principle or create more inflammation in a gut that's already been damaged. So remember, we talked about the sieve, right? A gut that's got some little leaks in it. So you have a bite of gluten, creates a little bit of leaks. Gluten actually acts kind of like a crowbar and wrenches open these things. It opens up things called gap junctions using zonulin. All that's unimportant. The bottom line is every bite of gluten, which is barley, rye, oats, and wheat, not all oats. That's only if they're not certified gluten-free, but any of those can open up the gut and create leaks. When that happens, our body does what it does, which is it's self-healing. So it goes and it seals it back up. And then another bit of gluten comes by, opens it up, and our body heals it. And that goes on and on. But in those interim times when the leak is open, when there's a breach, any of the other foods, including the gluten, can get into the bloodstream unfully digested. And therein lies the problem, right? Because now you have little Lego trucks and tiny parts of Lego buildings, meaning a polypeptide or a polysaccharide, that are sliding into the bloodstream without having been vetted by the small intestine. That brush border is all about vetting. It's all about managing what comes back and forth. And suddenly there were holes, there were spaces between the guards, and they slipped on through. And these are the foods that in the context of a leaky gut can either continue to cause or can perpetuate a leaky gut. Okay. So many people will look at this and you're probably already looking at it going, why oranges? Why would you take away my oranges? Well, first of all, it's only 3 weeks, people. Second of all, because oranges happen to be one of those things that most of us have seen a lot of in our diets. I mean, it's a staple of the American breakfast, let's be honest. And as a result, in the context of a leaky gut, these are going to be the things that slide on through more frequently. And there's a higher chance that they've become like allergens to our gut. Now I can hear some of you saying, I don't have any allergies. I don't ever get sneezy. I don't ever get diarrhea. Can I just redirect you back to this picture? You may have no gut symptoms. You may have only acne or only depression or only hyperactivity. If you have those things, there's too much inflammation. And if you have too much inflammation, your gut's leaky, period. So here we go again. So this is the one to take a screenshot of if you're hoping to do this on your own. These are the basics, okay? I call this the elimination diet or the comprehensive elimination diet 1.0, okay? And the reason it's 1.0 is because this will get you 95% of guts better if you do it for 3 weeks. So many people are freaking out at this point. Some of you may have already left the webinar, but here's what I would say. There's just a lot of food that is left. It turns out there's a lot of food left. So you can have any whole, real organic food. I mean, organic is optional, but ideal, right? Locally sourced is optional, but ideal. You can have pure, clean water. You can have healthy fats. You can have vitamin-rich vegetables and fruits, just not oranges, soy, or corn. That leaves all the other vegetables. That leaves all the other fruits, okay? You can have any meat you want except for pork, beef, and eggs. So for meat eaters, that leaves you chicken, it leaves you bison, it leaves you turkey, it leaves you duck, it leaves you all the fish and shellfish. There's actually a lot there. You can have any nut and seed except for peanut. Peanut isn't even a nut, so you really can have any nut or seed, okay? Peanut's just some legume masquerading as a nut. There's actually a lot left. All right, so we're going to move on to step 4, optimization, because this is really important. A lot of people think they can just plow through the 21 days and then on day 22, just start reintroducing things, but you have to pay attention to your experiment as it's rolling out. And the reason for that is there are a couple of clues that will tell you whether you're on the right track or not. So one of the things that happened to me the first time I did it was I didn't adequately prepare my kitchen. I didn't remove every possible thing in there that had any of the allergens on it. And as a consequence, somewhere probably in the first week when my brain was a little foggy and I was just coming out of my, chronic gluten high, I poured a little soy sauce in my stir fry. Now, you'll know how altered I was by the fact that it didn't even occur to me that soy was the problem. I just looked at the label and saw wheat in there, but it was soy sauce. So soy was clearly in there too. So you have to really prepare, and then you have to be prepared to tweak things if you screw up. And by tweak things in that case, I just mean start over. Start over. It's only going to be an extra few days, right? So you need to be asking yourself, how am I doing? You need to see if you're having a day 3 detox. So on day 3 of an elimination diet, if you've actually begun to heal the gut, and that's usually when the gut starts to heal, it's a really rapidly healing organ. It needs to be, because we're punishing it all day and, and challenging it with the outside world. It turns over really quickly. And so you will start to heal the gut on day 2, 3, or 4. And if you've really gotten enough foods out that you're getting some good healing, you might feel worse on day 2, 3, 4. I call it the day 3 detox. Okay. And what does this look like? It can look like worsening of any symptoms. It can look like new symptoms. Maybe you're doing this diet because you have anxiety and eczema, but on day 3, you get brain fog and some hives. That's okay. All of this is a final common pathway of inflammation. And what is happening that's causing that inflammation is that your gut is healing. And for the first time in maybe a long time, it's like kind of looking around to do its true work, which is to detox your body. It's supposed to pull in nutrition and put out the junk. And now it's not dealing with inflammation all day long. And so it has extra time and energy to be like, Who's got something to throw down my way? Like, you, brain, pass me your mercury. I'll take the lead from your bones. I'll take the glyphosate from your, it starts to pull stuff down. And as that stuff traffics down to the gut for eventual removal, well, it can feel yucky. You can get a little inflammation bump on those days. It doesn't mean you're on the right track or the wrong track. On the contrary, it means you're on the right track. I screwed that up, so I'm going to say it again. It doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. It means you're on the right track. And it usually resolves in a couple of days. And there are a bunch of things we do to optimize your experience in my course to help you so that if you're feeling lousy, you have some tools to help your body. We have Epsom salts baths, we have CD, we have all sorts of things to help support your body quickly getting through the detox day. There's also the question that comes up sometimes for people who aren't getting results, right? I said 95% of guts heal, and that's true when they do it with the nutrition plan I give them. But there's a handful of people who don't. And so it's important through that 21 days, not just to be plowing ahead if you're not getting results, but to be asking the question, what are my symptoms still? Is there anything else I should take out? Some of you are you're going to get a little day 3 detox, but you're still going to have joint pain on day 9. Okay. For you, I would encourage you to take out nightshades if you were talking to me and I was giving you advice. Again, this is information, but just as a little pearl to tuck away for yourself. Joint pain often has not just inflammation, but nightshades in particular can cause a lot of joint pain. So I recommend making tweaks along the way so that by the time you get to day 21, you feel great. Anita, do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question because I know you had said something about Epsom salt, and something that's strange that's been happening since my long COVID is that it feels as if my inflammation gets worse when I take a hot bath or a warm bath.
Okay.
Is that something, or I don't know?
Well, it's definitely sounds like it's something for you right now. And I don't know why that is exactly, but I will say this. Hot baths tend to create, if you're really, really inflamed, a hot bath is not necessarily the thing that feels the best because it kind of can create more heat in the body, which is part of what's happening with inflammation. So maybe a lukewarm bath would be better. The more common thing I heard is Epsom salts can create itching in the skin for some people. And so in that case, I recommend different types of baths, and we can talk afterwards about, for your situation, since you and I are working that way together. But yeah, it's not for everybody. And that's maybe a good time to just say, like, not everything works for everybody, right? You have to be willing to kind of try other things. For some people, bentonite clay feels a lot better to do a bath with a few tablespoons of bentonite clay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for your question. All right. So I think we're on step 5. Yeah. So step 5 is the part that many people are always, kind of eager for when they start the diet. But I will say by the end of the 21 days, I will be honest with you, a lot of people are like, do I have to go back on any of that food? Like, are you going to make me go back on gluten and dairy? Of course not. I'm not making you do anything. Remember, that's the general premise here. But I do want to be honest with you. Most people, once they've healed the gut, do not feel good going back on gluten. So if your family business is pizza making with your great Nona's recipe, you may not want to do an elimination diet because you may learn that your gut has never been happy with gluten. And now it's not going to let you forget it. Because what happens when you heal all that inflammation, right, is that the inflammation goes down and it's no longer kind of chronic and simmering and all the time. And so something you may have become used to now doesn't feel so good. I like the analogy of if you're covered in a whole full body poison ivy or poison oak, if you're from California, and you're itchy and hot and inflamed, everything hurts and everything itches and is annoyed, and a mosquito comes up and bites you on the shoulder, you're probably not going to notice the mosquito, right? Because you already have all this inflammation. It's like a drop in the bucket. Your body's like, didn't notice it. If you heal all that up and a mosquito bites you, you're much more sensitive to it, right? You're aware because you don't have all this backdrop of inflammation. The same is true in the gut. And once you heal the gut, your body becomes more honest with you. It has the ability to share when it's not liking what you put in it. And I will be honest, most people I work with do not feel good going back on standard gluten products. I say that because I do know some people who go to Italy and try the ancient grains and do all that sort of thing there. But in this country, we have a lot different gluten than we do in other parts of the world. And it just doesn't feel good. It may have something to do with the fact that we spray Roundup on everything to bring it to dry it out as a desiccant. The bottom line is it doesn't feel good. So you have an option to reintroduce everything and anything you want in the context of a gut that will now give you information and a body that will now be able to give you information. Okay, that's really the beauty of this. It's not just that you feel amazing for 3 weeks and then go back to eating everything you're eating. It's that you now systematically reintroduce. And what I recommend doing is make the list of all the foods that you definitely want back. I talked to a patient a couple of days ago who was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to go back on coffee. I've drunk it forever and it helped me for a long time. I feel different on it and my brain's clear and I'm done with caffeine. Wow. Now, most people can get back on caffeine without a problem. It's not the same as gluten. Most people can get back on most things in that list. Let's take a look at the list again. Most people, when they add these things back one at a time, systematically over a period of 3 days or so each, and are truly honest with themselves that they didn't have any new symptoms, any gassy, bloaty, farty, any headache, any little, postprandial. There's this medical term, postprandial, is there like a word that goes with it, or just postprandial mental state where people get kind of like brain foggy after eating, and that's considered normal. It's actually not normal, you guys, if your body agrees with the food you're eating. I can tell you that because now when I go to restaurants with people who are eating foods that inflame them, and I'm not, because as you can tell, I'm kind of obsessed about this. I'm sitting around with people and I feel like I'm the only one not drinking at a party. Like everyone seems drunk after food. And I'm just sitting there going, when will the fog lift? When can we have interesting conversations again? It's very interesting. And you might like to go back to that, and that's fine, right? The whole purpose of this is to give you options and to help you make informed decisions about what you're putting in your body based on what you know it can do for you. And most of these things get back okay. I mean, I have people who can't get back on soy. I have people who can't get back on sugar, people who definitely can't get back on gluten. A lot of people can't get back on dairy. If you're dealing with a chronic infection, I usually say, don't add back the gluten, the dairy, the sugar, the caffeine, and the alcohol. Those are my big 5. After an elimination diet, if you're one of my patients, you can consider this medical advice, because if you're dealing with a chronic infection like Lyme, as a lot of my patients are, those are the 5 things that are going to undermine your Lyme healing project, even if when you added them back, you felt okay. Okay, so those are kind of on first principle, those are the things to avoid. So any questions about the reintroduction? Because this is a tricky part for a lot of people. And I want to make sure those of you who are going to run with this kind of have the information you need to do this correctly. Go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah.
I actually just noted some questions that were in the chat here, so I'll just run through them really quick. They're super quick.
Perfect.
Somebody asked if eggs were okay for the elimination diet.
No, they're not. Thank you, whoever you are. I forgot to put them on. This is why you shouldn't make your slide deck at 10 o'clock at night. Eggs should be on this list. We will fix that. Thank you.
Perfect. And then the second one was date sugar in moderation.
So I have morphed over time to allow date sugar and coconut sugar because they just seem like they haven't ever been a problem for anyone. And so we've just been able to put them in as kind of like one of our, I basically say agave, brown rice syrup, blackstrap molasses, date sugar, coconut sugar, and stevia. Those are kind of the 6 that I have found to be pretty tolerable for everybody.
And then the last one here is supplements, especially magnesium. Is that okay to stay on a supplement regimen while you're doing the diet?
So my answer to any of those questions for the people who end up in my group are always the same. What's on the label? Okay, what's on the label? Look on the label, see if there's any of this stuff on the label. And if there's not, you're probably okay with it. Magnesium tends to be one of those things that's pretty innocuous, pretty fine. Probiotics often have dairy, they often have soy, so you have to read the labels. Soy lecithin is still soy. Okay, so read all the labels. I tend to recommend people avoid magnesium stearate in general because it's a filler. It's not so much an allergen that I've found, but it does take up space, and it means you're pooping out a lot of your supplement because it's a binder. It's used as a filler because it binds well and it holds things so you can encapsulate them, and then you encapsulate and hold them and poop them right out. Not all of it, but I like to get my money's worth, kind of, I'm sort of that way about things, but it's not going to break your diet. I like a handful of supplements for everybody, whether they're doing an elimination diet or not. So I'll just mention those right here. So I think everybody should be on a good multi-mineral, not necessarily a vitamin. The way I teach people to eat involves a lot of vegetables and a lot of above ground different colors. And so it doesn't so much matter the vitamins for most people if they're eating that way, but minerals are hard to get from our food supply, just because of the way we farmed for the last couple hundred years. Omegas, a source of healthy omegas. Some people use fish oil. I tend to worry about the quality of the fish and whether the oils have been heated, which would oxidize them and make them not as healthy. I use a company called Body Bio, and I use their Balance Oil is what it's called. It's a vegetarian based, hemp and flax and sunflower seed balanced oil that's never heated. And I know it's never heated because that's the group of people that cares all about the membrane, and they're super anal about that particular kind of issue. So an omega, a mineral, vitamin D, if you don't live on a beach right now, I'm sorry for your suffering if you do. But a good source of vitamin D, and vitamin D usually doesn't have a bunch of weird ingredients. So that's usually fine to get at a health food store. In the fall, winter, spring, in most places, you need a vitamin D. And then a probiotic. So probiotics, I like to get as much as I can supplement wise from the sun in the summer or from my food supply. And so I like to use kimchi or sauerkraut. There's a lot of good kimchis and sauerkrauts that don't have any of the allergens in them. So that's a pretty good probiotic, or you can use a supplement too. And my company that I love, it's not my company, the company that I use a lot is Pure Encapsulations, primarily because they're very pure and they don't encapsulate a bunch of crap in there with their things. So there's not a lot of chance of getting allergens. It's a good one-stop shop for most of these things. Other questions? I'm curious to know, and you can just throw it in the chat or raise your hand. Is anyone here actually considering doing a comprehensive elimination diet? Okay, I gotta get I see only 2 people and both of them have their hands up. That's pretty cool. Let me see if I can see more people. If I stop share. All right, how many hands do I see? Oh yeah, woohoo, look at you guys. Anyone on the fence who just needs like a little bit of information or maybe a little bit of encouragement or a little bit of something that we can offer you in this Zoom call to help you feel empowered and confident? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you do. And if you're not afraid to, be empowered and all that over Zoom in front of a bunch of strangers. Okay, I see a couple hands up. Kathy, you want to share? Oh, you're muted, honey.
No, I wasn't looking to share. I just was saying that, yes, I want to start an elimination diet.
Awesome. Just wanted to raise your hands in the air like you just didn't care. Diane, how about you?
Yeah, I have a question. Nice to meet you, Kristen.
Nice to meet you too.
I have a question about the sugars because I do have a problem with yeast and so I keep to a very, very low sugar diet, any sugar, fruit sugar, anything. And so I'm a little perplexed that it would be okay on the elimination diet to have any fruit sugar like a mango or pineapple, which are really, really, a healthy smoothie, which could have 25, 30 grams of sugar. It just seems anathema to what I've been doing. And so if you could talk, and molasses and agave. And so if you could talk more about that, I would love to learn more. Thanks.
Totally. That's such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. But first I want to poll the audience. When Diane said the word mango and pineapple, who got kind of excited? Okay. If you got excited, chances are you have yeast overgrowth. Okay. Yeast overgrowth is talking to you all the time. Okay. It's like, wait, mango's okay. Wait, pineapple. Oh, wait, Diane's right. There's a lot of that on there. I can survive. That's what they do. Okay. I know that. I used to be there. I was so there. I was the person who couldn't have like a full meal with my belly out to here. And if I didn't have enough bread, I'd be like, where's the bread? Okay. Or where's the potato? Where's the white food? So it's not you. if you have a sweet tooth, it's not that you have a tooth that's sweet, you have a yeast overgrowth. If you get hangry when someone takes the last cookie, or when you're starving, it's not you, it's your yeast overgrowth. So I really appreciate this question. I appreciate that even as a person who has a self-described yeast overgrowth, you muscled past your yeast to ask the question that needed to be asked. Okay, so here's the answer. My major tweak to this diet, and what makes it really different from just doing the Institute for Functional Medicine's diet, is that I reduce the carbs as well, and I increase the healthy fats. So I teach people in my course to eat in such a way that they are replacing the usual kind of bulk of our meal of carbs with more energy from healthy fats. And that does a couple of things. Number one, it drives the yeast crazy because they can't get at the food if it's coated in fat. Number two, it kills them. Not all of them. I'm not sure they ever all go away, but they definitely get quieter. And when they get quieter, it does a third thing, which means your cravings are less. You don't feel like, what do I do about the fact that there's mango in my house? Like, you don't have that anymore. I mean, there might be some people on here who've done this diet with me who might be able to speak to this, because it's hard to imagine if you've never been there, but it really does make a difference to alter the ratios of where you're getting your macronutrients from carbs to fats. So that's what I teach in my course. Basically, the whole first and second week, we're talking about how to build your plate out of what's left to make food delicious, nutritious, to feed the human exactly what the human cells need, and to start slowly starving off the parts of the microbiome that are not serving you. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, but because like I don't have, because I've been on such low sugar for so long, I don't have like sugar cravings. And so because I'm so afraid of feeding the yeast with the sugar, but what you're saying is if you increase the fat, the healthy fats like avocados and stuff like that, then basically that the sugars can't penetrate to feed the yeast. Because I'm so afraid of feeding the yeast with any sugar whatsoever. So I don't have the cravings. Like I can walk past a mango just fine. So I guess but I guess that if you're saying that's the science of it, is that if you increase the healthy fats, then the sugar can't get to the yeast to feed it.
Well, it's a piece of it. So the sugars that you do eat. So let's say you eat, do you ever eat a carrot?
Yeah.
Okay. So in my universe, I delineate between carbs that create a big burst of sugar and those that don't. So those that don't are pretty much the bulk of the foods that are on our plate. Okay. Proteins, fats, and then the above ground vegetables that kind of are leafy and green or grow off the ground or even sit on the ground like squash, have much fewer rapid sugars in your gut and in your bloodstream than those that grow below the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is I take everything that grows below the ground, I put it in a big category called carbs. And then I take all the fruits and I put them in the same category because they do the same thing. Mango especially. And then I take all the legumes and I put them in the same category. So the beans and the lentils, they all go there too. And then I take all the gluten-free grains that are fair game on this diet, rice, all colors, brown, black, white, I don't care. Quinoa, millet, amaranth, buckwheat. Those are all fair game. They're not allergenic, but they can overgrow your yeast. So I shove them over onto that list of carbs. And then I teach people how to eat them with respect for what they can do to your yeast and to your bloodstream, right? Because if most people eat a lot of those all day long, right? Like I tell people to limit that to 3 servings a day. And most people are eating more than that at breakfast. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which makes their yeast super happy because their yeast have been kind of hungry and hangry all night long. So all they can do is tell their human, find the Cheerios, find the cereal, find the dairy, find the croissant, find the whatever, right? The whatever sugary thing, find the fruit. All that stuff is carbs. So if we put it all in one category and then we follow some basic guidelines so that when we use them, we're using them carefully and with an understanding for what they can do, we can mitigate all of that. And this is actually, I'm so glad you brought it up, Diane, because when I used to teach this in the very beginning, just one-on-one, I would teach it with patients and I would have really good results in 9 out of 10 people. And 10% of people were like not getting better. And they still had ups and downs in energy and they still had their acne and they still had all their, so I looked very carefully at what was going on with those people. And every single one of them was overeating the carbs. They were having fruit for breakfast. That's all they had. They were having grains for lunch. That's all they had. Chicken and rice and rice and rice and rice and rice, lots of rice. And I said, well, I think there's a problem with this. I think this is an issue too. I think it's not just the allergens that need to be omitted and eliminated to heal the gut temporarily, but we have to restructure the microbiome by feeding it differently so that it's not also creating an obstacle to healing.
So doesn't it, so it's kind of like you're getting close to talking about keto then, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that, yeah.
I am. So I don't promote this as a ketogenic diet, but I will tell you that this does develop the ability for a person to burn ketones for fuel. It
Mhm.
creates metabolic flexibility. People who just eat carbs all day long or eat carbs with every meal tend to be on this roller coaster of energy, right? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Roller coaster of energy. Yeah. So when you put carbs in your body, you do get a really quick burst of energy. It's like throwing kindling or dry leaves on a fire, campfire. Okay. Big energy burst. And then what happens? It burns up quickly, gone. This is why you have ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs all day long. So you eat a big meal of carbs and 20 minutes later, you're starving. Why are you starving? You just put in 1,000 calories of carbs. Well, number one, half of them went to your yeast and they threw you the scraps. Number two, your pancreas secreted insulin, shoved those sugars that you absorbed into your cells. Your cells either stored them as fat or burned them quickly, turned them into ATP, and then suddenly they were gone. Poof. Your blood sugar saw huge amounts. Insulin causes to go shoving into cells, and there's nothing left in your blood sugar. Your brain's like, yeah, I'm tired. So this is the problem with just eating a carb-based diet. Unless you're going to eat every hour like a ruminant, which is fine. I have children who do that. You know, I have athletes who do that. It's a thing, and you can get away with it for a while if you're an athlete, but after a while, it creates problems like diabetes, like hypoglycemia, you know, like leaky gut because you've got a yeast overgrowth. So what I encourage people to do is to consider shifting the bulk of their energy away from a carb-based lifestyle to a fat-empowered lifestyle, because every time you put fat in your body, you're putting a log on the fire along with the kindling. And once that log catches fire, you've got a nice even burn. This, people, goes away. And I'm speaking as someone who knows. I used to live here. I was called the perpetual grazer by my Uncle Jeff. I was the grazer, the family grazer. And I was like finding like the peanut butter, and I was finding the ice cream, and I was finding bread. I mean, bread with ice cream, sure. Carbs all day long. And I was an athlete, so I was burning through it. But the bottom line is I was doing this all day long, and my body temporarily forgot how to burn fats for fuel. Now, your body innately knows how to do this. It just takes a while sometimes to get back in the swing of things. And I help people do that on this diet by improving the kind of quality of the food, the proportion sizes of the food, and also making sure they're eating fat with every meal, because you got to keep putting it in for the body to remember how to do it. Does that make sense, Diane?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sarah.
I have a question. Could you just give us a few more of the fats that are your favorites? Because you keep referring to how fats are going to burn, the things we need to burn. Could you just quickly list a few of your favorites?
Sure. I love how you're calling it my favorites. So ghee is my favorite. Ghee, Ghee. It's a clarified butter. Oh, thanks, Kristen. She's putting it in the chat. And what I love about ghee is so many things. Number one, I make it and I save like hundreds of dollars a year by making it myself. It's super easy to do. Just go on YouTube. And the second one I would say is coconut oil. And those two things are my prime cooking fats. I don't want anybody to cook in liquid oils. Okay. You can take a beautiful liquid oil, like, you know, olive oil from Syria or Spain, and you heat it and it's no longer beautiful. You've just oxidized that oil.
But isn't avocado oil just as healthy as coconut?
It depends on what you do with it. So I don't believe that avocado oil stays healthy when you heat it. And I know it has like some 500 million high, you know, smoke point. But what I remember from biochemistry, which isn't a lot, I'm not a biochemist, but what I remember about fats is that if you have a liquid oil, by definition, you have carbon-carbon double bonds. And if you have carbon-carbon double bonds, it doesn't take that much heat to break the bond and oxidize it and shove on an oxygen and a hydroxy group. So once you've done that, you've changed the nature of the oils. The oils are no longer the same oil that they were. And so your body doesn't recognize it as an olive oil. or an avocado oil. So do I know for sure that that happens in avocado oil? No, I don't, but I go on first principles a lot. And to me, it's like, look, leave it out. When in doubt, leave it out. It's only 3 weeks, right? And then see how you feel when you oxidize your avocado oil after you have a healed gut. Do that experiment and let me know what you find. So coconut oil, ghee, those are my top. I also will cook in lard from a healthy animal. And by healthy, I mean an animal that was humanely raised, properly fed. It ate the diet that its great grand animal would have been fed or found in nature. And it's not getting vaccinated and immunized and stocked full of like GMO corn. It's an animal that's eating properly. That animal's healthy for us to eat. Its gut is healthy enough to make sausage out of. Okay. Sorry, vegetarians. Vegetarians, by the way, can do this diet too. You just have to, rather than putting, meat and fish on your protein list, you would just use nuts and seeds. Beans are also wonderful. However, they count as carbs. So you'd have to follow my carb rules. I saw another hand pop up, and then it went down. Maybe I'm on the wrong screen here. Anyone else have a question? We're sort of reaching the end of our hour, and I want to respect people's time and boundaries around that. But first, I want to show you one thing. Someone needs to mute, who's not me, probably. I want to show you just the details of my course in case you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, I want to join this woman and her people and do this 6-week thing. So in the 6 weeks, we do all 5 steps. We spend 10 days with information and preparation. And then we start eliminating on February 17th. So this course starts Monday. It's 6 weeks. It's online. It's on Zoom. You also get a private link to your own course platform where you get to review all the videos and all the materials. Kristen, can you mute whoever's not muted? I'm getting distracted. And then there's a bunch of recipes on that. There's a bunch of handouts and checklists. And basically it's all the stuff that I would want anyone I work with to have to be able to really kind of systematically and methodically go through this diet, plus a ton of community support. So we meet every week on Zoom. We meet Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And we have an hour-long call like this where we're just going through questions and answers and sometimes celebrations and challenges and helping people tweak and optimize their elimination diet. Because I want you guys to get results, right? Now, I'm fully aware that most of you are not going to come to that course, and that's perfectly fine. I really wish you the best in whatever you're doing in terms of your health journey. And I'm super glad you came to this because I believe this to be the foundation of anyone's health journey who really wants to get at the root of what's going on. So I'm glad to see you guys here and grateful for your attention. So any other questions before we wrap up? Diane.
Yes, hi, I'm back. How do, if you need to be careful about like legumes and carbs and which all makes sense, where are the bulk of the calories coming from? Like how do we make sure we don't lose weight for those of us who don't want to lose weight?
Great. So this is where fats are really beautiful foods. So on a gram for gram basis, or you can take tablespoon for tablespoon, there are more than twice the amount of calories in fats as there are in either protein or carbs. So what people forget is this isn't just about lowering carbs. This is about replacing them with the log on your fire. And when you do that, you're getting not only nice, slow, extended released energy burn, but you're getting more calories on a gram for gram basis. So, you don't have to eat the same serving size of fats to get the same caloric and energy intake.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
There was one question in here, a couple actually. So somebody was asking, is ghee considered dairy?
Oh, great question. So no, because the process of making ghee and clarifying butter takes out the allergenic portion of the butter. It takes out the milk solids and the whey. So those are the things that are potentially allergenic or can perpetuate a leaky gut. So, boiling the butter, unsalted butter, and removing all those solids gives you a clear, you can see to the bottom of the pan kind of butter that has a little bit of a different texture it'll solidify on your countertop, but I like to melt it back onto my food because that solidness has some graininess to it. And once you melted it, it's beautiful. I mean, it's a clarified butter. It's like you would get if you're eating lobster, if you've ever had clarified butter. I always add sea salt to everything that I'm eating, including everything with fat on it, because salt and fat together makes everything delicious. And if you haven't really embarked on your new relationship with fats, that may gross you out. It may freak you out. We've all been kind of programmed to believe that fats are going to harm us. And it's true that some fats are not good for us. Most of the fats that are promoted as healthy, like vegetable oils, are not good for us. That's way beyond the scope of this webinar. A really helpful treatise on all that you can dig into if you want is Nourishing Traditions, which is a cookbook and kind of manifesto written by Sally Fallon from the Weston Price Foundation. That's a good place to start. All right, Roberto, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I was just curious. Yeah, so like I've been hearing, it sounds like you're kind of steering towards that keto style. And I'm just curious, like, I know it's maybe a little controversial, but what are your thoughts of like the whole food plant-based vegan community that seems to like McDougall and those type of folks that really steer towards the high carb, high starch diets, and they point towards like all those studies from China that show like the longevity, the blue zone people that are eating those like high starch, high carb, and low fat diets.
It's a great question. I get that a lot. So here's what I would say. My favorite study, and the one I stand behind the most, is the study that actually matters to you. So this intervention is about doing a self-study, healing your gut. If you want to eat carbs the whole time that are on the approved list, eat carbs the whole time, right? See how you feel. See if you heal your gut. See if your energy is even. See if your brain is foggy or not. And if it works for you, by all means, if you're crossing diagnoses off your list, it's probably working for you. And if it doesn't, try something different. I'm all about the N of 1 experiment. The self-experimentation is just kind of my shtick. I do it on myself. I do it on my kids. I do it on my family. I do it on my patients with their permission. I do it with you guys. We're about trying to find answers to our health problems that haven't been solved by the dominant paradigm, or we wouldn't be here.
Okay. So then, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But it is okay that it's not unhealthy then to have these higher levels of fats intake in the, like they say, like the oils, the oils are like harmful for the body, for example, but you're saying that is okay.
That's not been my experience, Roberto. What my experience is, if you continue to eat a lot of sugars. So remember we talked about metabolic flexibility, and this is why I don't really say this is a keto diet, even though many people will end up in ketosis from time to time on this diet, which by the way is a beautiful place to be because your brain clears up and your eyesight gets better and you can hear things again. You're like, whoa, I didn't know my brain could work this well. Right? So that's a natural outcome of teaching the body to be metabolically flexible. It can burn carbs when carbs are present, and it can switch quickly into burning fats for fuel when fats are present and carbs are not. Okay. So what I love about this diet is that you can do it all sorts of different ways. I tend to try to figure out what's the thing that works for the most people, right? What's the thing that's going to cover the most bases? And this is the diet I've come to. And if you continue to eat, if you do what I do in terms of eating a lot of healthy fats and you continue to eat a lot of carbs, yes, problems can happen because the body likes to switch back and forth between one or the other. And if carbs are present, it's going to burn carbs first, which means if you're putting in a ton of fat and a ton of carbs, that fat's going to get stored. The carb's going to be quickly burned and then stored as, guess what? Triglycerides and fat. So you can stay in this rut where you're just storing your energy as fuel and you're not ever burning it and using it because your body has forgotten how to do that. And you're not giving it a break from the carbs to remember how to burn fats for fuel. So that's a little bit more complicated than I was maybe going to get into, but I hope that clarifies rather than makes it muddier.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. The other thing I'll say is a lot of the studies that have been done on fats haven't been done on healthy fats. They've been done on not healthy fats. Olive oil that's heated is not a healthy fat anymore, people. So you have to kind of ask the question of like, what was that study actually looking at? And I love vegans. I know a lot of them. I have a lot of them in my family. And I sometimes worry that they're not getting enough healthy fats. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. So you guys have been an awesome audience. I really appreciate your time and you're giving it to this conversation today. It's always a blessing and super fun to talk to people who care about their health and are looking for ways to make themselves healthier. I said I would give a bonus to anyone who stayed to the end. So all of you guys get a bonus, which is if you sign up for this course, I'm going to give you $50 off. It normally sells for $4.97. And I'm going to make a coupon, which I haven't made yet, but it's going to be done in the next 10 minutes that says you get $50 off if you put it in. And the word to put in is Zoom. Okay, that's your coupon. Kristen, did you put in the chat how to order the course if people want to get the course? Yeah, why don't you throw that in again? There it is. Yeah, that's it. If you've done this course in the past and you didn't get the information and the details I sent out about getting a discount, all my people who do this course in future courses, they get a big discount. So if that's you, please reach out to Kristen on the chat and she'll give you the right link. There was one other hand, Yana. Do you wanna
No,
talk?
I was giving a thumbs up for the discount.
Oh, thumbs up for the discount. Awesome. Guys, this has been great. Wish me luck driving to Baltimore today in the whatever it is out there. And please reach out if you have questions. I'm at support@KristenRymanMD.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions and help support you on your journey wherever you are and whatever you're heading towards. Have a great rest of your day.